And good morning, beautiful people of the center. I brought the mail today. I needed a little stand for it. I'll get to that in a moment. This month is sowing seeds of happiness. That's what our theme for the month is. And I have just really appreciated the book that we're reading together, A New Design for Living. This is an older edition, so the one in the bookstore looks slightly different. But what I like about it is that this book is pretty much the basic core ideas of our practice. That's what it is. So it's a great refresher for people who have been in the teaching for a long time, but it's also wonderful for those people who are newly attending and wondering, what is the Center for Spiritual Living all about? And it presents it in a very practical, easy way to understand. So we've been talking about planting and nurturing images and thoughts that are life-affirming, that lead to happiness, that are inspiring, that encourage us to connect to that heart that is inside us, the heart of happiness that was always there, that is our natural state. And how we do it? Well, through some core practices. For example, such a core practice might be developing new self-talk habits. Becoming aware of, what do I say to myself internally when I do something good? Do I dismiss it? What do I say to myself when I do something stupid? What do I say to myself when I walk into a room and I don't know anybody there? And can I consciously choose to say something else? Something intentionally kind. And when we start to adopt that practice, over time it results in powerful changes, a powerful sense of presence and well-being. Another example of a core practice would be, I talked about this 2 weeks ago, would be for you and I to get clear on what do we believe, what do I believe, and articulate that, to become comfortable in saying what I think God is, because that's what I love about the Center for Spiritual Living. There's no one size fits all. No religion is best other than your own one for you. So to get clear on what it is and articulate it, what is God to you? What is love to you? And what is going on here, according to you? And what's going on after here? That's important, and powerful changes occur in us, sense of resiliency and confidence when we practice articulating that. That's a core practice. Another example would be the practice of learning how to talk more about what I aspire to and what I dream about than what I don't like and what I'm worried about. That's a great core practice, to really exercise the use of that gift that creation gave us called imagination. And to not downplay it and minimize it, but to truly spend time thinking about the greater yet to be. It's about seeing ourselves, taking time to really enjoy the practice of seeing ourselves, keeping the kind of company that nourishes us, seeing ourselves in the kind of environment that really blesses us. There is something wonderful about entertaining the things and people and ideas that meet our creative and emotional needs. Powerful changes take place in us when we embrace that and welcome it. As I've been thinking of all of this and core practices, one of the things that I remembered was an organization that perhaps you've heard about. I heard about it a while ago. It's called the Complaint-Free World Organization. And their vision is, we see a day when people focus on and speak about what they desire things to be rather than complaining about how things are. And so what they do is they sell these purple complaint-free bracelets, and I think their goal was to reach 60 million people, and I think they may have already reached that. The idea is that that's 1% of our world population, and if 1% of our world population can experience that shift, and leave the toxic communication of complaining behind, experience that shift, and what they'll see is a tendency towards more positivity, more hopefulness, more optimism, more happiness. That's their idea. They say, well, anyway, you and I, every day we interact with dozens of people, maybe hundreds of people, and if 1% of the population can experience a shift, then the cascading influence on all the people around us will be like these waves of beneficial peace and understanding and happiness. What a seed to plant in consciousness, that I can have a part in this ongoing wave of happiness. Well, we've been talking this whole year about that idea of planting seeds, and we've been using the idea, the image of a garden planting seeds. And it's important, I guess, to include in the conversation that in the process of planting seeds, inevitably undesirable things get planted too. Sometimes they were there already, right? And today's topic is all about that. The topic is uprooting the undesirable, which is why I brought the mail. Now, when it comes to uprooting the undesirable, on page 139, he explains that each person, you and I, must find our own right method for how to go about it. Once again, no one size fits all. No, you're wrong if you don't do it this way. None of that. What's your way? So there are suggestions here on page 139 about how you might go about uprooting the undesirable. He says one suggested strategy, he calls it, making a flat denial. Denying the accuracy of an undesirable thought. Now, I understand that, because isn't it the case that sometimes we might find ourselves, we catch ourselves thinking or saying something that we actually no longer believe is true? And in such times, then it becomes valuable to say, no, I don't believe that anymore. You could say it inwardly, or you could actually say it outwardly. A friend of mine told me that in another tradition, he learned that when he said or thought something that he no longer believed, to quickly say, cancel, cancel. And so I adopted that practice and found that, goodness, my day was filled up with muttering, cancel, cancel. And it takes a while, but after a while, you learn to preemptively pause, gently, not violently, just pause. Another friend said he actually uses the purple bracelet technique. He's got the complaint-free world bracelet, and the idea is that when you catch yourself complaining, you don't have to say anything. You just take the bracelet off and put it on another hand. It's your own system. And he says truly it took him about 21 to 30 days to actually make it through a day without having to change the bracelet. And I really enjoy that very much. There is a second technique that the authors of the book suggest for uprooting the undesirable, and it's a gentler way. He says, make a strong affirmation in the direction of the thought that you're nurturing. In other words, give time, give focus to the things that have heart meaning and value to you. So you might say to yourself repeatedly through the day, something like, my mind is the center of divine activity. Or you might say something like, my thoughts and inspiration come from the mind of God and expressed through me. You could say that repeatedly as you go about your day. It's a way of interrupting the other kind of thoughts. Or you could say, I am guided and sustained by the very power that guides and sustains the universe. And if you don't know how to form your own sentences like that, right here on page 209, there are whole paragraphs of examples, and you don't need the whole paragraph. You could just locate one sentence that has resonance for you. Like here's one over here. God is right where I am. That's a powerful short statement to carry around. Or, I am sure of myself because I am sure of spirit within me. And the way you use it then is you could, for example, write it down on a Post-it and then stick it in your wallet so it attaches itself to your money. And then when it comes up, it acts as a reminder, or you can stick it on your refrigerator. It's how we could use those spiritual thoughts, the seeds that are being sold in the bookstore. You can put it in places where you stumble on it and then use that as a reminder. Or you know what is a fun thing to do? Text it to your friends without explanation. That's great, Or, put it on your Facebook status. And an even deeper practice is to take such a statement and journal about it. Once again, go deeper into what does it mean to me, explore it, or start a blog and once a day choose a statement and write your thoughts about it. You can be trusted. There is wisdom in you. There's a third practice mentioned in here, and he calls it the method of straightforward realization, which to me is the practice of observing the nature of reality, sitting in moments of contemplative silence. The idea is that when we sit, gives us the space to watch, to notice, to observe what really is and what isn't. What reality is, especially when I drop my mental chatter about it. Daily time to be receptive and observant and witnessing. And a great place to practice that is right here at our heart coherence meditation practice. It's free. Anybody can come. It happens on the second and fourth Monday evenings at 7 p.m. upstairs in room number 10. I like to meditate by myself, but something happens when I'm in a group. It's like, I don't know, the volume of silence is turned up. So you're invited to that. Or you could come to any one of the contemplative services that we have on Wednesday evenings. First Wednesday, prayer, meditation, silence, and song. Third Wednesday is a healing service. And then the fifth Wednesday is our chanting service. So there are plenty of opportunities to sit in receptivity, to trust your wisdom to come forward. So the topic today is uprooting the desirable, which is what reminded me of junk mail. And this is just a few days from the United States Postal Service. Great illustration, isn't it? Because it's a whole mix-up of mailers and information, and I think there are some important bills in there. There's some faux offers, and it's filled up with trickery. Do you get this too? Yeah. So sometimes I'm just tempted to throw it all away. It's tempting, but in that action is the potential mistake of losing something very important. Like, for example, as I was looking through their earlier service, I thought, oh my goodness, I don't want to lose this. This is an invitation to Anne Galbraith's wedding. I don't want to throw that out. And this one says it's very important. Maybe it is. Doesn't it remind you also of junk mail on email? Nowadays we have to have spam filters on our email boxes because there's junk mail coming in. And do you know it's the case that there is so much junk email that spam filters can't accurately keep up? So there is a condition now known as a false positive, in which something good is accidentally labeled as something bad. And you don't get it. You know what I mean? Okay. Reminds me of that saying, don't throw the baby out with the... I know. Or another way of saying the same thing is that in all of this dirt, there is something valuable, something precious. That could be a great mantra for our topic, uprooting the undesirable. In all of this dirt, there is something valuable and precious in here for me. And here's a tip for when we are working with consciousness. Actually, I don't even have to reference the dirt when I'm making my statement. It's not because I'm in denial, it's just as plainly obvious. So I can state it very plainly, there is something precious and valuable in all of this for me. Wait and see. What a great way. And why would I want to practice that way? Well, to keep me open to noticing when there's something valuable and precious shows up, so that I'm not distracted and dismayed by the colorful, loud, shouting for attention things that are poured down upon me every second. Do you know what I mean? That's the problem with junk mail. The loud ones and the useless ones, they get all wrapped up with the things that are important. You know, some of them are disguised. This one says official business, penalty for private use, but it's an ad. Some of these, you know inside all this paper there could be an important bill, and this one has no identification on. I nearly threw a credit card away because I was so overwhelmed. Some of it so loudly and messy, wrapped around the things that this one says, congratulations on your certificate of coverage. I didn't apply. But I'm very grateful. All of this reminds me of one of the parables that Jesus taught his students, in which it's in the book of Matthew, by the way. It's a very well-known parable in which he describes the state of mind of happiness. I call that heaven. He describes that state of mind. He says it's like a farmer who's sowing good seed in the field. But while everybody was asleep, unconscious, someone with not so good intentions came along and sowed some weeds at the same time among all of the good seed. So when the first blade of wheat appeared, so did the first weed appear at the same time. And not just an ordinary weed, a special kind of weed, a weed that is a strangling weed, and at the beginning of its life, it mimics that which is good. Yeah, it's called a tare. So you can't tell what's the good stuff and what's the junk. And so the workers come to him and say, when they notice this, didn't you sow good seed? We thought you sowed good seed. What's going on? How is it that you have this mix-up of junk and good stuff, and do you want us to get right on it and rip all the weeds out right now? Isn't that what we should do? And then the farmer responds interestingly with a good bit of insight for us. And it's a very tender and wonderful piece of insight. And actually, the book of the month, The Force of Kindness, caused me to think about the farmer's response, because this book, like the farmer's response, is all about being mindful when doing our inner work and dealing with the things that spring up. Being mindful so that we can sort out from our heart connection that which is valuable and that which is not, and that which is real and that which is not, instead of hastily overreacting, quick to defend, quick to rip out. And the book and the farmer too says there might be something better suited to your soul. There might be something better suited as an approach for you. And it's this: to be thoughtfully watchful, to be careful, to slow down. One of my early teachers, when I was learning about ministry and planning and life in general, he said it's important to know this. Go slow in the beginning because it'll help you go faster in the end. Because if you go fast in the beginning, you're going to have to go slow in the end because you're going to have to clean up the mess. I never forgot that. And it's basically what the farmer says to the workers. He says, no, don't go and rip up everything right now, because if you go and collect all the weeds, they're so wrapped around and so confused with everything else that you're going to tear up the good stuff as well. You're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So here's the thing. Slow down. Don't respond for a moment and let it all rise up together, because there will come a time, call it the harvest if you like, there will come a time when things will reveal to you their true nature. And from the wisdom within you, you will be able to separate the one from the other and gather them up separately. There is that kind of wisdom in you. And sure, you may lose some of the wheat as a result, but you won't lose everything, which is the potential downside of overreacting. So breathe and observe that there are 3 powerful tips for you from the farmer about life. Number 1, don't rush. Number 2, you might have to cut some of your losses. Don't hang on. And number 3, don't give up at the first sign of trouble. This particular parable is one of the only ones that Jesus actually interpreted for his students, because it's pretty complex. It goes on and on and on, many layers. And in part of the interpretation, the question is, who planted the weeds amongst the wheat? Who was that? And he says, well, actually, That was the wicked one, or the devil. Now, I believe that the devil is an idea, not a person, not an entity, not a power. I believe the devil is an idea that describes a kind of thinking that we all have. It represents, I would say, chaotic and confused thinking, the kind of thinking that leads away from happiness. It's a state of mind that goes against harmony, against life, and away from compassion. That's what it is. There you have it. And sometimes this mindset is given a name or a personality. It's called the devil, sometimes called the destroyer. Why? Because that's how it shows up in our experience when it has free reign. I believe there is no such thing as a devil. Yet, haven't you from time to time had something inside your own head that acts like one? I'm talking about the ideas, the thinking that leads you to doing and saying and acting and writing in a way that will be your own undoing. And it's right inside, so it's all wrapped up around and confused with the good stuff. And knee-jerk reaction, destroy it all, when there is something good and valuable in all of that for you. So that's what I think about when I read the parable. The evil one is that attitude in me that can destroy well-laid plans. It gets all wrapped up in things. So the teaching of the parable and of the little book is the same. It says this: don't resist it at first. And certainly don't let it determine your life. Don't let it cause how you show up. Don't react impulsively. Those are the don'ts. Here's the do's. Watch. Observe. Because you can be trusted. In time, your innate wisdom will sort it all out, and you can be sure that things will reveal themselves to you as they truly are, and your wisdom will know the difference between what is for you and what is not for you. You are born that way. So if you feel that urge to jump up and throw everything out, there goes the baby. Think instead of the mantra for today. There is something good and precious and valuable for me in this. Wait and see. I'm going to apply that to the mail. I'm going to take it one piece at a time. Something else I found out in this book of the month, The Force of Kindness. The author describes the Buddha's invitation to the world in a way that was refreshing, that I hadn't read before, and I really enjoyed it. She says the Buddha's invitation to our world is to fashion our lives around what we care deeply about. And I thought about that, and she goes on to say, and the message invites us to unstintingly, bravely practice kindness for our own sake and for the sake of all of life. And it occurred to me that is exactly what I think of when I think of sowing seeds of happiness. And that's what we're trying to do, to fashion our lives around what we care deeply about. I think that's a good definition for spiritual living, to fashion our lives around what we care deeply about in the midst of all the chaos. I read this and I thought about a colleague of mine whose husband got a diagnosis of a terminal disease. And something like that changes your whole worldview. And so their whole worldview changed as they looked inwardly to nurturing and love and making mindful decisions. And at some point they had to move home to a smaller home. And I'll never forget this, that when they made the decision to move, they had to also decide what furniture to take with what pieces of art. And so together, hand in hand, they stood in front of every piece and asked the question, do you absolutely love this? And if they couldn't both say yes, it didn't go with them. And I've never forgotten that. I've really just looked at that. And as I was remembering that, I came across this sentence in the book. We need that strong power of intention to continually cut through the surface appearances, to not merely settle or compromise. So I'm thinking about that. Sowing seeds of happiness, how can I add to that? How can I fashion my life around what I care about deeply and still deal with things like this? And for me, it means to not let the message of chaos and compulsion and urgency that shouts out from me, not only from the mail, but from other areas, and to not let it put me in a mental state that I do not absolutely love. Instead, to take life, to take one piece at a time, like the unrushed eternal beings that we are, that have eons, endless time, and to look at one thing and say, there's something good, precious in this for me, wait and see. I'm willing to try that. One last piece from the book, The Force of Kindness. The author again describes the Buddhist belief in a way I haven't encountered before. She says that according to Buddhism, the belief is that everyone has in their heart a want to be happy, and that we should be happy, and that we can be happy as human beings, even though we live in a complex world, in a real world of tumultuousness and junk sometimes. In other words, I say, we will probably have spam mail and junk mail for a long time to come, and weeds and unexpected twists and turns, and dissolutions and diagnoses and surprises. That's the nature of things. It's the nature of life. But not to let it get us down. We can surely still discover our natural-born heart of happiness in the midst of all of it. We did not create it. It was always there. We're finding it. And why not use the phrase this week to help you discover it? There is something precious and valuable and good in all of this for me. Wait and see. Let us pray. There is one power in and through all creation. It is the one itself, God, the living Spirit, the presence, the mind of God from which all things emerge and all things are created. It is where I move and breathe and have my being. My thought comes from it and is of it. So I express it this way. I am a channel for its love. Its life lives through me. And as I speak this word of prayer for myself, I hold it to be true of every person who identifies with it. So when I say everything I do, say, or think is governed by divine intelligence, I say that for all people, that we may wake up to our heritage and our true identity. And when I say I am an expression of God's love, I say it for all people everywhere, that we may wake up and enjoy that and know together that we belong to each other in this place, and that there is a peace and certainty flowing through us as a result of knowing in this confident way together. So that Spirit that is God knows inside of me its own self. It is everywhere present and around me, and I take refuge in it, I rest in it, and allow it to guide and sustain me. In deepest gratitude, I release this word of prayer to the law of God, and so it is. I invite you to breathe in and sigh. And with that sigh, we make a transition to the part of our service where we share together. I invite the ushers to stand. And won't you take your gift in hand and say with me, I bless this gift. I send it forth to heal and prosper. It does excellent work in the world. And so it is. Ushers, please receive the gift and welcome back, gentlemen of the band.